Hello again. Welcome to our second Zoom meeting of the day, and we're continuing with Erin Sullivan, world-renowned astrologer and visionary of the soul, author of 6 astrological books, including Saturn in Transit, Retrograde Planets, and Astrology of Family Dynamics, to name a few of her books. We just talked about the outer planets as agents of consciousness, and we're maybe going to continue with some of that, and then we're going to specifically focus on the USA chart and what's happening today, December 8th, 2016. Erin?
Yes. Hi. I'm looking at the slides. Okay. Yes,
Do you need help with finding the slide to come up again?
Right. I'm sorry. So you really did want me to do this. Okay, I'm going to use this slide.
I can edit out any mistakes, so don't worry about it. So we'll just, it's still recording.
Help her through it, help her bring it up again.
I can bring it up. It's really quick. I just have to... There it is. Okay.
It's okay.
Yay. Okay. Now I can say what I was going to say. When we were talking, I was talking about elevation of consciousness or change in consciousness. I was talking about the planets Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. Now, when we have, origins are very important. And so that when a planet is sighted, has been cited, I can't list them all because we've got a short time because we're going into the United States chart, is that there have been certain key events that have taken place. And when Uranus was cited, it actually created many types of revolutions, especially in the public sector, within human beings. People were actually allowed to move beyond the boundary of Saturn. They didn't have to do what their dad did for a living. They didn't have to, adhere as closely to their sort of status quo. There was a lot of radicalism and revolution that took place. And when I think in terms of individuation, I think in terms of Uranus. It allows you to become more individual. There was a global diaspora that took place during that time. People began to leave their tribes, to move around the world. There was a lot of change. And it's an example, really, of needing to be initiated, in a sense, to be able to see what's going on. And so once we're told that there is something out there that wasn't, then we're often more likely to be actively participating with it. And it does rule novelty and invention and advancement and human progress, freedom, and revolution. And so even just consider that in order to actually see Uranus, it took an invention, a telescope. When it came to the sighting of Neptune, and that was like 1846, what it was assigned and aligned with is, and this is going to be very important in the American moon or American chart, because I really want to talk about that part, and that is that Saturn and Neptune were exactly conjunct, as I pointed out before, but they were exactly on by 2 degrees, and what's that? 2 degrees of the same degree that the moon of the United States of America's horoscope is. So that what we had with Neptune transiting the moon of the United States, when Neptune was sighted, it also is that oil was struck in the United States for the first time exactly 13 years after Neptune was sighted. New York City was lit with gas. All sightings of the horoscopes, as I mentioned, will reveal mysteries because it's got the moon in Pisces. Now, it also was the rise of the Theosophical Society, and the desire when Neptune was sighted to have, Annie Besant and Madame Blavatsky and Brigadier General Firebrace to bring together the East and West religions. And so they had like 13 sects of Tibetans and the Western religions, and they were all going to meet in New York. That fell apart, as one might understand. It also rules things like invisibility, photocopying. Literally copying things with photo plates. Mesmer brought in hypnosis. It was an amazing kind of time. It was the rebellion of women. They were declared soulless beasts in 325 BCE by the Council of Nicaea, but it became the suffragette movement by the time Neptune was sighted. They didn't want to be invisible. When Pluto was sighted, I mentioned that it was the rise of the Third Reich. It was also the rise of the romanticism in the United States of the criminal. The only law that was ever broken by or changed by breaking it was the prohibition law of alcohol. So they just consistently broke the law which is what's going on with the marijuana. Right now is it just keep breaking the law, and eventually they're just going to give in and say, oh, whatever, just have it. So Neptune was weird. It was lying there like a sleeping giant, and it wasn't really until it was sighted that it, Pluto was really finally sighted. People began to see the unseen. They began to realize that they could get the wealth and the riches of the earth and use them to manipulate other cultures and countries. And we also had the potential for using, already discovered by Marie Curie, who happened to have been a Scorpio opposite the invisible Pluto, the unseen Pluto, for uranium and polonium. So it was only 15 years later that, since it was sighted, that we actually ended up with a neutron bomb. So we're looking at Pluto not as a horrible thing, but as actually a lonely man, really, who had to steal love. And he happened to have found the love of his life, who he couldn't keep forever. So within our own souls, often Pluto is a longing for the union of opposites so that we could become whole. And so, we will grow under a Pluto transit while we suffer, because that's the whole process of Pluto, is that we have to die on some level in order to be reborn. Nobody, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. But when it comes to Pluto, we both have to do it. So psychologically, the collective now sort of, halfway around, because Pluto was Pluto was sighted at 17 Cancer, and now it's at 17 Capricorn. So what it's doing is it's opposing itself. Let's move on to the American chart, because this ties in absolutely to the U.S. chart with two levels of where it's going right now, because Pluto and Saturn are involved in the nodal axis like it was in 31, like it when it was discovered, and like it is right now. So why don't I just shut mine down and we'll move on.
I'll share my screen for this one. It might be just...
Oh, okay. Okay, then I'll just end my show. Perfect. So you can't see mine, eh?
No, we can all see the chart, the Sibly chart that Linda put up.
Oh, I see, because I have one with it all highlighted and marked. Okay. And you can't see it. Too bad.
Can you see it?
Well, I've got mine up.
Oh, well, it's the same chart.
Well, it is. Yes, actually. Right, because I actually have typewriting on mine. So as long as you've got the Sibly chart up, and
Yeah.
isn't that interesting about that spelling error? And I'm such a anal, like literary person that when I saw that, I thought, oh well, hey, this is an opportunity for us to make a difference, and people can start spelling it right again. And I love it because Rudra was the only teacher I ever had, and he and he made a spelling mistake, so he wasn't perfect. Okay, so who has questions? How are we doing this?
Do you want to go into the USA chart and talk about that, and then, go back and forth or however, and then we can open it up for questions? Or do you want to take questions now?
Let's have a question, because then it actually helps.
Well, I will say, Erin, from listening to your opening statements about the transpersonal planets, I guess this is more of a remark, but I sure hope we have another planet being discovered that will bring some softening to all this Capricorn that's coming South Node in 2020, or the harshness of the patriarchy, some kind of awakening that will help everyone wake up.
Well, the South Node in Capricorn means that we've already been there, right? Because both Saturn and Pluto, will have they'll be on their mutual South nodes and North nodes. And so what we're really looking at is essentially the natal horoscope of the United States. Let's say it was a sentient being and not a country, but it actually had, a personality and was an entity with consciousness. It's all Cancer: Venus, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, and the vertex, if you use it, all in Cancer, with Pluto in Capricorn. Okay, so Cancer is noted for tribalism, territorialism. They like to walk around their property and make sure it's all in place. They're very possessive, and they are highly nurturing. They want to feed you until you blow up from food. It's a mothering thing. Everybody loves their mother, but hello, I'm a mother. I know it. I get an earful from my daughter every so often. It's wonderful. The feminine is a wonderful concept. But you see, the United States has taken it very seriously as a possessive. They want to possess things, countries. And because it's opposite to Pluto and the South Node, and the South and North Node are lined up in there, it looks like there's going to have to be a flip into the opposite. In other words, into something where we do get a much more, we return to the feminine culture. This isn't just an astrology. This is a geographical and geological prediction as well. This is that we will be much more in line as we move into the new age, which takes ages, 5 or 100 years or so. We will head more towards the feminine side of things. It's what happens. I mean, it's like, and so I would say, yes, that the United States is now fighting rapidly, because it was in the 1930s when, the whole idea of gender equality, and back into the 1800s with the English suffragettes, when Neptune was sighted, we're looking at, a return to the feminine. But this isn't going to be a lot of fun.
Erin,
sure doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. Erin, with all those Cancer planets, they're ruled by the moon in Aquarius. Would you like to comment on that? The moon in Aquarius in the 3rd house?
Yes, I would. because that is exactly where Neptune was when it was sighted. Also is where Neptune returned a few years ago. And it was a few years ago when Neptune was at 20 and returned at 25 degrees, 27 degrees of Aquarius. That is when the United States started to really lose touch with the people. And the moon in mundane astrology is the people. And what the people with the moon in Aquarius all want to be free. And there's always been an incredible level of racism and hierarchical positioning and jockeying for ascendancy in the United States history, because it's an aggressive, possessive, territorial, tribal country. And it urges in its nature, South Node in Aquarius, that it has a tremendous amount of experience already in collectivity, but its egocentricity, North Node in Leo, is what's very, very largely played out at this stage. So with Neptune having transited the moon, as its return, I mean, even just that in itself is a statement of massive statement. But when that was in like 2010, yeah, Neptune went to 23, then it went to 22, and retrograde back and forth. And by April of 2009, we had Neptune on the American moon, which meant that the people were becoming very confused about what they were learning, what they were hearing, third house, what they were being taught in a very elementary fashion, and what on earth it is that's really going on. Because you'll notice that I don't use the word interception, but Neptune Pisces takes up the whole of that house with 6 degrees of Aquarius on one side and 1 degree of Aries on the other. So we've got a very Neptunian perception of people's learning levels, and that they are, the American public is, inclined toward being split off. I mean, if you've got Moon and Pluto on one side of the chart, everything else on the other, then you've got yourself a very, very big split of the people, the ground grassroots people, and the hierarchy.
Erin, do you think that, because right now Uranus is on Chiron,
yeah,
right? So, and I think it's still retrograde. I don't remember, but and then it's not going to be that long before it moves into Taurus. Do you think that will help? I mean, when you talk about all the Cancer planets, and we seem to play out a lot of the shadow of Cancer and Capricorn, because in my perspective, the feminine archetypes have been usurped by the patriarchy energetically in many ways.
No, that's a global phenomenon, love. We have to look back to other eras, like before Zeus and before the sky gods came down from the north, as the myths, as the textbooks say, came down from the north around 1100 to 1200 BC, around the time of Troy. And so prior to that, it was first of all, America didn't even exist, okay? I mean, it had previous owners, the natives, and look what they're doing. Look what the natives are doing. The natural residents, the first peoples, well, they weren't the first, but they owned it first. All right, so they're going through their uprising. There's been a tremendously interesting flip toward concession, recognizing that, maybe it's time. Well, this has been going on around the world since Australia started to, Great Britain had people, Canada had First Nations people dancing in Parliament, and now we're having the First Nations people, original people, standing guard over the land, trying to take back. The feminine function is something that has been decimated by the 3 main sky gods, who are Awa, Yahweh, Allah, and the unholy Trinity. So those are the ones that have been ruling us since the beginning of, well, the Piscean age, okay, which would be somewhere around 1200, 1300 years, or 2500 years ago. So it's been going on for centuries. And it's only just beginning to shift towards something different. And that means that there has to be a mutation. And that is what's taking place. Look at the gender bending that's going on. It's phenomenal. You know, it truly is. It really is quite something. How it's just a huge experiment in how do men get to be men and embrace their feminine side, embrace their compassion, embrace their good manners. I mean, the men have very bad, not you guys, okay, but the men tend to be much more aggressive. They tend to be much more, competitive. They tend to be more angry and jealous and embattled. There's less in the way of compromise. They're just not used to giving up their whole body to nurse a baby, for example. Giving up your whole life. So it's really nothing bad. It's not about men are horrible and women are wonderful. It's the masculine function has become over-dominant. Therefore, in a Jungian sense, it's absolutely and utterly distorted. The feminine function has tried to become masculine, but it looks really dumb. It doesn't work. So it's going to be 500 years. I mean, I wouldn't start worrying about your wardrobe yet, or turning into a woman overnight. It's not going to happen. But there is going to be, when we look back, say in 1,000 years, God willing that we do, we'll say, oh, wow, so it was all during this period where this dominance of the male, which results in, even sort of penile projections going out into space constantly, trying to abandon Earth, trash Earth, and move to another planet, to Mars. I mean, that's crazy. This is not what a woman would do. She'd keep her own garden clean. A man wants to go to Mars. So, again, this is not about men. It's about the masculine function, which we both have. I have a masculine function. If I didn't have one, I wouldn't even get out of bed in the morning. I would just lie there all day, just having, lovely female time. Men would never be loving and loved and tender to each other or to women if they didn't have a feminine side. So it's really a matter of how does it play out. Wendy?
Does anybody else want to come forward with a question?
Erin, this is Wanda. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I'm wondering, I don't know how close the south node of Neptune how close is that to the south node of the moon?
Oh, I don't know where the south node of Neptune is.
Oh, okay. Because I know it's.
Are you talking about Neptune's south node?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that came from, though.
The south node of Neptune is at about 12 degrees Aquarius.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So it's close enough to be to that north node in the second. And I was kind of wondering, that would mean the north node is in the 8th house. And I'm looking at, the resources, the fight again over entitlements, so-called entitlements, which I would think would fall in the 8th house, and how we can get beyond.
Yeah, that 8th house is about your collective resources, isn't it? Because the second house is like, what are you worth, you yourself, like as a human being and also financially. Whereas in the second house, we're looking at, 8th house, we're looking at Pluto's house. We're looking at the resources of the globe. Mm-hmm. We are looking at the global resources, which are all of the diamonds, the minerals, the riches, everything ending in IUM, gold, all of our Gaia's wealth is guarded by Hades. He is the guardian of Gaia's wealth. And so when we look at the 8th house, we can, in a collective sense, in this, mundane sense of it being a country, having the North Node in Leo, I should suspect that, yes, the American horoscope indicates that the United States of America has actively proceeded to eat all of the riches and drink all of the oil, so that all of our wealth is bound up. All of my wealth is bound up in a collective greed. Because Cancer can be quite greedy, and protective, defensive. And as a culture, that's what it is.
What are we going to do? How are we going to get through the next 4 years, the next 10 years?
Well, that's why I've been crying for days. I don't know. I really truly believe that if we do our very best to ourselves and within our neighbors and I really believe that does help. But I think it's going to take more it's going to be activism. It will have to take a revolution of sorts. And the fact that we have like the outer planets now, Saturn Pluto is, back and forth opposing the natal sun. It's just finished up about 2.5 to 2 years at least of opposing the sun of the United States. So there's a little break in there where we have to oppose Mercury. Pluto opposes Mercury, all hell's going to break loose in a vocal sense. Yeah. So it's through communication, through people talking to each other and forming little groups.
Yeah. One thing I was looking at last week was Uranus is going to square Pluto in the U.S. chart exactly next summer. I think
that's right. Summer. Yeah. Because I'm looking at my Sibly chart, so I can see Uranus equals 21 Aries right now, and it's been back and forth squaring Mercury already. Yeah, and it's going to make its final square. Let's see, it went retrograde at 24, and now it's going to go back over it in April 2017. Uranus will square the United States Mercury in the 8th house, and I think that could mean a major upset in what it has as its personal resources that could be taken away. Because you see, all the while that we had the transit of Pluto opposing the sun, I keep thinking you're seeing my picture, transiting Pluto opposing the sun, we also have Uranus has been back and forth Saturn 3 times, okay? All during the same time that Pluto is opposing the sun. So we've seen the United States lose face. It was such a fantastic country. I'm a Canadian. I mean, I lived right on the border. We would always, kids played on the border. We'd run down and get Hershey bars and, and we'd go shopping at Penny's, and it was all very exciting. And, it was our brother. And so it's very painful and sad. But it's been always, since it came into being, it's come in with a major force, Saturn rulership in Libra. The ruler of Libra used to be generals. So it's always been based on war. It's always been based on the balance of the people and who's in power. I mean, that's basically politics anyway, isn't it? But Uranus has been opposing it. So it's been breaking, slowly, cracking. So it's facade as a leader. And in fact, when I've been to, 7 or 8 years ago, I was teaching in Brazil. People said, we are so sad. We are so sad we have lost our model. And that's what's happened to the perception of the world that has a sensitive core, is that people are very sad that this has happened to this country because of it being such a great country. And also changing lots of rules, I mean, like stopping slavery and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's been
we've come really far. We've come really far, and
very
now
far. It's a
we're going to take a dip backwards.
The leading edge of countries. Well, that's what is so horrifying about someone as mentally unstable and incapable of focus or any kind of deliberation as Donald Trump. Like, he is a terrifying individual, because I myself, if I were in a meeting or in a room with him, I'd just leave, because I'd end up getting into trouble.
Right.
I
Me
would.
too.
Yeah, I'd be mouthing off, and I mean, it'd be a problem. And I would just be telling him to, in no uncertain terms, to just bugger off, basically. But I'm not there. It's not me. And the only thing I can do is, on Sunday, we're going to start making cookies for the people up, the Indians, who are they're my heritage. I'm part Sioux.
Are you up near International Falls, just past International Falls?
No. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now.
Oh,
I mean, I've lived
okay.
here off and on for years. I'm in the Southwest.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that the United States, it really needs to see now. Zeus is the ruler of hubris. So Jupiter in the United States is conjunct Venus, conjunct the Sun, and it's in a stellium, so that Venus is Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, vertex are a stellium. So therefore, they're all conjunct. If something hits Venus, it's going to hit Jupiter, then it's starting to do a little kind of vibrational. So what we're getting here is a breakdown in the organization of the actual social relations and political relations that is brought on by hubris. Now, when George Bush was giving a talk, when he was becoming the president, I was in Denver giving a lecture, and I called it a lecture on the justice of Zeus. Now, the justice of Zeus in ancient mythology, if you commit hubris, which is of course excessive pride, Zeus will take your wits away. How appropriate. So that's what's happened, is that everybody's gotten their wits taken away because the leaders are witless. And so even, nobody knows what they're doing. As we speak, all of us are experiencing a degree of witlessness, which produces, of course, global anxiety, and the zeitgeist est Weltschmerz. The world pain is so vast at this stage. I mean, we have yet to get to January 21st, haven't we?
Right. There's so much talk about the Electoral College and that maybe he won't get elected.
There's something really interesting, because when all the support and fortune astrologers are getting their necks ripped open because astrologers could be the worst people in the world. I can't tell you. Oh gosh, what I've seen. Anyway, so all these people are, but they weren't wrong. They maybe did the wrong chart. They should have looked at the American chart, right? Because it's the United States of America. It's not about Trump and Clinton. But the weird part is that I loved it that Christine Skinner, my friend from Britain, she's the only one that said Hillary's going to win, but she won't take office. Now, how would she know? She's parliamentarian, Britain, like Canada, where I'm from. But I suspect that there's going to be something really weird and interesting take place between now and January 21st, and we don't know what it is. It could be something silly and minor, like when Obama was sworn in, they had to do it the next day and it was Mercury retrograde, right? And so he had to swear in again because they blew it somehow. Something is going to take place, and I don't know what it is, but my suspicion is that there will be an outcome that we have not fully foreseen, and we just simply haven't seen it. And so what's going to come up from that at that time will be, let me see the transits for the United States on the 21st.
Erin, we have about a minute left.
Well, the minutes, and that's then we should close decently. So we do have something going on about the 21st, and I'm trying to get the exact transits, but they're not coming up really fast. Oh, well, Uranus will be direct by then. January 2017, January 20th, we've got Moon in Scorpio. Oh, interesting. Yeah, Mercury will have gone direct. Mars is 23 Pisces, square Saturn at 23, and Uranus is 20 Aries, and it has gone direct.
Mars will be conjunct Chiron.
Yes. Yes, it is. And and we have Pluto at 17 degrees of Capricorn, and that's going to be the final passage of Pluto opposite, close to within orb of the sun.
Erin, I've unmuted everyone. We're all going to say thank you very